seen anything yet.
Ifølge statistikken reiser hver fjerde nordmann til fjells i påsken.
Det pågår nå i kveld 4 leteaksjoner i fjellet, og i alt 8 personer er savnet.
En familie på 4 er savnet etter at de ikke kom fram til bestemmelsesstedet i går kveld.
Ledningen har hele dagen vært vanskelig av været.
2 fjellvandrunge menn savnet i kveld. Fjellvandrunge menn.
4 skiløpere fryktes altså omkommet.
De 2 31-åringene hadde vært veldig saknet i dag, da de ikke kom tilbake fra tur.
Og mannskaper fra Røde Kors, Hjelpekorps og Norsk Folkehjelp deltar da i det.
De 2 som er fjellvant og godt utstyrt skulle ha avsluttet fjellturen i går.
Rundt 50 personer har vært med og lett etter ham i svært dårlig.
Til sammen 110 skiløpere har vært med. Savnet.
I dag tidlig ble det sett i verk en omfattende leteaksjon på den savnet.
Hi, I'm Scout Taylor Compton from Rob Zombie's Halloween, and you're listening to the Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to the Hysteria Continues. It's episode 214, and this time, what better way could there be to celebrate the summer and the month of July than heading off to the snowy wastes of Norway for Cold Bray? Yes, the 2000, was it 2008? 2000, yeah, it was 2008, or was it 2006? Six. Oh, there we go. As you can see, the stellar background already kicking in, the research that we're so well known for, the Hysteria Continues. But yes, we are, this time, we're sort of heading into the 2000s with the Norwegian slasher Cold Bray, the first of the trilogy. So this was your pick, Joseph, I believe, wasn't it? So was this one that suggested, or is it one you wanted to pick? I can't remember.
People have always been asking for it since we've been on the air, and I figured I guess it was about time we covered it. I didn't necessarily want to choose it. I just did it for the fans. Okay, well, there you go. So apparently I hear there's websites that you can do it for the fans, but we won't be doing one of those, I don't think.
Onlyfans.com.
Yes. How do you know that, Erik?
He has an account there.
You can always pimp. You could do extra. Remember those 0800 things you used to get on British, probably on Irish TV back in the early 90s. Did you used to get those?
Only girls are dying to talk to you.
Exactly. Yes. So maybe you could pimp out your OnlyFans accounts, Erik. I'm sure there'll be quite a few comers for that. So, well, Erik, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You'll be really glad to hear that my joke of the week this week has nothing to do with the band Coldplay and the relationship between the band name and the title of this film. I've come up with a different joke of the week.
Okay. Well, we were expecting less or more? I'm not sure.
Erik never meant to cause us trouble.
Ooh, the voice of an angel.
And talking about the voice of an angel, Nathan, how are you doing?
I am doing very well.
Sorry, I meant Susie. Sorry, no, not you, Nathan.
No,
sorry. No, I did mean you, Nathan. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, very well. I'm off work, which is always a plus.
That's good. And that's Stripes in the background, I hear.
Oh, sorry. I tried to shut the door so she wouldn't come in, but when I do that, she claws the door and it's even louder.
Well, that's okay. As we know, we always welcome cats on the Hysteria Continues. And just a quick thank you to everyone for their kind words about the loss of Martino and Argento, two of the podcast cats that both passed away this month in separate instance, unfortunately. So very much missed, but thank you for your kind words. And rest assured there are more cats, about 15 to be precise, but none quite as vocal, although we'll see what we can do. So
you could have one, or you could have 1,000. It never, hurts any less to lose one.
No.
Do any of the 15 have horror themed names?
Yes. I'm trying to think. Actually, one of them trouble is we gave them names because they're actually sort of strays or street cats that are kind of it's a colony that lives nearby that was kind of adopted us, and we've kind of adopted them, I kind of guess. So we feed them. We have about 5 kind of living with us, and the others just kind of visit. So we tried to give them really stupid names so we wouldn't get attached to them. And do you know how well that works? Yeah. So there's one that we've called Shit Snow Leopard for some reason, but he looks a bit like a werewolf, so we're going to be calling him that. There was Lon Chaney Jr., but he was one of the ones that were missing a couple of years ago. So I'm trying to think. Well, they're mostly Stuart is obsessed with the Tudors at the moment. So we've got Catherine of Aragon, Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary. So yeah, various names, but none too horror related.
You should name one Ethel.
Ethel, well, that's true. We do have. I have got Frances in front of me, like she's on a grey tabby, and she's a bit. We called her Frances after Frances Farmer because she's quite a strong-willed lady. She hasn't had a lobotomy though, not yet.
So you didn't name her Frances after Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
No, different type of Frances after Frances Farmer because she's a bit of a firecracker. So, but I'm sure there will be more cats on the podcast coming up. So, but before we get to the main attraction, as ever, we'll talk about what we've been watching recently. We haven't recorded for a couple of weeks-ish, I think.
Yeah, like 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks. So there may be. Well, let's see what we've been watching. So, Erik, you're sounding a bit croaky there. Are you all right?
I am a bit croaky.
Have you got something in your throat?
Yes, I always do, as you know.
Of course. You've still got the wine flu?
I think this is the remnants of the wine flu I had on Saturday.
Okay.
Sunday. Yeah. So I think I've given myself a proper cold just from running my system down so much by drinking quite a lot of alcohol.
Yes. It's a bit like... do you remember that? No. You remember that film Freaky Friday? It's like me and Erik have swapped bodies.
It is, isn't it?
I know, because usually you're the one that's drinking a lot.
Well, I've found myself chasing a fat hairy man called Jose around the village most of the week. So yeah, so it's definitely something strange going on.
There is.
If you ever get into vegan chunky Kit Kats, then all bets are off.
Indeed, but well, hopefully your voice holds out, Erik. If you want to tell us what you've been watching.
Okay, well, 2 late 90s movies that I saw in the cinema back in the day have appeared on Netflix. So I watched both of those. The first one was Wishmaster. So when I went to see this in 1997, I think my initial reactions were it was a bit meh. And I felt it kind of was a straight-to-video movie that had somehow made its way into the theaters. And that's kind of how I felt watching it for the first time in 23 years. It's very, very, I won't say bland, but it's just kind of plotless and meandering and just doesn't really... I don't know. It doesn't feel like a satisfying movie to me. There's the basis is a genie, or djinn as they're known, is released from his imprisonment in a ancient gem, and then he needs to find somebody to grant 3 wishes to allow him to rule the universe, or some kind of nonsense like that. I couldn't really follow what his demands were of the world. Plot is not the high point of the film. It's directed by Robert Kurtzman of KNB Effects fame, and he's like super dreamy. If you've ever seen a picture of him, he's way dreamy. So I don't like to diss his work, but Wishmaster, unfortunately, I did find really lackluster once again, on my second viewing. It is the best of the series because I've seen 2 and 3. Oh, well, I haven't seen Wishmaster 4, so maybe I should hold out until I've seen that one. It could be an absolute classic. The film, as you'd expect, as it's directed by an effects dude, it's very effects heavy, and the practical effects and the gore, which is plenty of, is really good and really well done. But they do use a lot of CGI, and 1997 CGI has not aged well at all. It looks like PlayStation 1 graphics, and it's kind of laughable and kind of quaint and fun to look at. I'd completely forgotten that the film is littered with cameos from horror A-listers. So you get Robert Englund is a main player in it, but you get cameos from Kane Hodder, Ted Raimi, Tony Todd, Tom Savini. They're all in there. So that was kind of fun to sort of spot the celeb. But overall, I found the film kind of meh still. It was written by Pete Atkins, who did the screenplays for Hellraiser 2, 3, and 4. And the film really feels like Hellraiser 3. And I know you're a fan of that movie, Joseph, but I'm not. Hellraiser 3 and Wishmaster both have this kind of confused plotting and just a stream of endless effects and, people being turned into, twisted versions of themselves at big events is kind of the main thing the two have in common. It has a glossy feel, but overall, Wishmaster, no, it doesn't have even a nostalgia appeal to me. I thought it was meh.
I think Hellraiser 3 is it's more like akin to something like Riff Tracks. It kind of belongs there, whereas I think Wishmaster is just bland. Yeah. I think Hellraiser 3 has some kind of like je ne sais quoi going for it, I'd say. But,
Nathan, how about you? Are you a fan of the Wishmaster movies?
Well, I'm a big fan of the first one, so I got to disagree with Joseph and Eric on this one. I mean, come on. There's a scene where a guy gets his whole jaw torn off and his tongue's like hanging out.
I know.
It's so gross.
I like that bit, but just overall, I just found it a bit...
It's got great dialogue, too. Pit your tiny 20th century brain against one who walked the spaces between the worlds and trod the wings of angels beneath his conquering feet.
The way he delivers his dialogue is so annoying as well.
It was the woman who said that line, but he was possessing her.
Okay. Yeah, but once the djinn is speaking, he's trying to be like this eloquent pinhead type character who's delivering these, soliloquies, and it's just embarrassing. Okay, Justin, have you seen Wishmaster?
I can't. Well, I know of it, but I don't remember if I've ever seen it. If I did, it would have been way back in the mist of time, and it didn't leave a huge impression on me. Although I do, again, it's one I would have read about in Fangoria. I certainly haven't seen it in the sequels, so if I did see it, it didn't leave a lasting impression. But was it somebody not Dudikoff, Michael something, the main
Andrew DeVoff.
Andrew DeVoff, that was it. Okay, that's name rang a bell. So, right. Well, thank you. Before your voice gives out totally, Eric, have you got another one in you?
Yeah, the other one I watched, and it's about the same vintage, and it's a film I enjoy a considerable amount, is Species 2, which is, of course, a sequel to Species. And I remember seeing this in the cinema and thinking, oh my God, this is one of the most bizarre studio films I've ever seen in a theater. It's really like a big budget version of Extro. The setup is that the first mission to Mars encounters this sort of black gooey substance which contains alien DNA, and it turns kind of the astronauts into versions of the creature from the first Species films. And when they come back to Earth, all they're obsessed with doing is shagging women and impregnating them with babies that burst out their chests, 20 seconds after they've had sex. So there's tons of shagging, tons of nudity, tons of gore. It's just the most ridiculous movie. It's just absolutely nonsense. It has awful acting. It has brilliant, like Wishmaster, it has brilliant practical effects and dreadful CGI. But it's just, it's sleazy and stupid and gory, and it's just astounding that it's a studio movie. Because, as I said, it feels very much like Extro. It's like somebody gave, is it Harvey Davenport was his name? Harry Davenport gave him, $20 million to make a sort of big budget remake of Extro, because that's what it feels like. It just feels so ridiculously out there, and it's on Netflix now. So if you have never seen it, I urge you to watch it because it's quite something.
Yeah, the first film is it's like kind of an okay sci-fi horror film, but that's Species 2 is so weird.
It is weird.
Yeah, I love it.
Nathan, you're a fan?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen any of the Species movies. I thought they were sci-fi, and I kind of veer away from sci-fi a little.
Well, no, they're creature features, really. I mean, this Species 2 does start off in space, but it quickly gets down to Earth, and then it's you get to see a man's bottom in it. You like men's bottoms, don't you, Nathan?
Yeah, but is it like, I don't know, a humongous hairy one or something?
Is anything bursting out of it?
Like, it's a nice waxed one.
Is anything bursting out of it, or is it not that kind of movie?
No.
Out of his butt?
Well, you've seen Society, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Face coming out of the butt. Yeah.
I don't think I saw species rhymes with something, but I'm not sure if I saw a sequel or how many sequels did it have?
It had another 2. It went up to Species 4, or Species: The Awakening, it's called.
Right. Okay. Because I remember, wasn't it the first one was famous because it had a supermodel was the villain, wasn't it? Or
Natasha Henstridge. She's in this one as well.
Oh, is she?
As kind of a good guy this time.
So turning on its head like Terminator 2.
Exactly, like Terminator 2.
I wonder where they got that idea from. Oh, well, anyway.
From Terminator 2.
But of course. So, okay, well, thank you, Erik. I'll give your voice a rest before we get to
Yes, I'm going to have a nice cough now.
Okay, right. So, Nathan, how about you?
I watched Becky, the Kevin James horror movie where he shows up at this house, kind of like a home invasion movie, but like there's a formidable teenager that's on the property that goes up against these Nazi characters. I liked it. I thought it was really good, really entertaining, very fast paced. It's still really new, so I don't want to give too much away, but I actually was like, Kevin James was really good in that role, better than I expected, in all honesty. But yeah, good movie. I know some of you guys have seen this, right?
Yes.
Like Kevin James is way dreamy in the stills I've seen.
Even as a Nazi.
I don't care if he's a Nazi, if he has that beard.
Oh, Erik.
I'm sure someone said that about Hitler's mustache at one point. Yeah, I also saw Becky. I mean, I know it's got some attention for Kevin James because he plays like this scary neo-Nazi. And, you know, like Nathan says, he goes kind of mono a girl-o with this teen girl who seriously has some repressed psychotic tendencies. But, you know, it's essentially a home invasion thriller. And I found it's kind of driven by this really lame MacGuffin. Although I guess it's a little more of a polished approach than what you may be used to in these types of films. I liked it, but at the same time, I don't really have a desire to ever watch it again. I mean, it's one of those movies that you just kind of forget about. I mean, it's pretty gory and, you know, it has some fine acting like Nathan said, but I don't know. I've just forgotten most of it, if I'm honest.
See, while I'll disagree that I've forgotten most of it, because I remember most of it, I will agree with you that for me, it's a one-time watch. I mean, it was good for what it was, but once you know how everything's going to turn out, I just don't find it would be very rewatchable.
I kind of find something like, as far as home invasion movies, like You're Next is kind of more rewatchable, isn't it? I've seen that quite a few times. Yeah. But
that feels like a home invasion slasher.
Yes. Well, this kind of, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Becky, but I thought it didn't really feel like it had a great deal of substance to it. It felt more almost like, nothing against comic books, but it felt more like comic book, really, the way it kind of, I don't know. I enjoyed it enough, and I thought it was kind of like people kept comparing it to like an adult Home Alone. So it had this kind of like cartoonish violence, and it was especially the scene where the man gets the scissors in the eyeball, or no, his eyeball gets pulled out, doesn't it, or something? It's where he gets his eyeball cut off with a pair of scissors. That was it.
That's really
which is quite cringy. But everything, it's a fun watch. But like you say, it's one of those ones that are one and done, I think.
Yeah.
So, Nathan, what else have you been watching?
Let's see. I also watched no, wait a minute. We've already covered that movie. Never mind.
Well, let us know.
It's American Gothic, but we talked about that already, haven't we?
Oh,
yes. We did.
We actually did an episode on it. Yeah.
See, like it slipped my mind. I don't know how.
Well, there you go. We've done, how many was it? 214 we're up to. So, you know, there's it's a lot.
213 because we did Blood and Black Lace twice.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, of course. So.
And I will say before I make a pick and tell you guys what I'm going to choose for my next podcast pick, I do look through our episodes and make sure we haven't chosen it. And I've done it more times than I probably should admit.
Well, maybe we should test our dear listeners and actually repeat ourselves and see if anyone notices.
Okay, let's pick a random episode that we've covered.
Well, just put it out twice. You never know. Anyway, so anything else, Nathan?
I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Joseph, I think you've been watching a fair bit.
Well, yeah, I watched Becky, like we just talked about. I also watched Aqua Slash, and I like this one a lot. It's completely different than what I expected. It focuses on like a specific event rather than like a body count. And I know much of the criticism I've seen kind of hurled its way was because the body count structure here is atypical. But I didn't really mind because I thought the characters were sort of like, they sort of straddled that fine line between like broad and embarrassing. And it actually manages to sort of wring some suspense from its, I guess it's a gimmick. It also looks great, and it's like appropriately gory, and it's very short. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly offbeat enough, and it probably won't appease the most stringent of slasher fans, but I would actually watch this again. I thought it was kind of interesting. Certainly, fun in the last 10 minutes, if nothing else. I enjoyed it. It's called Aqua Slash. It is Friday the 13th at a water park, but don't go in expecting like a rapid fire body count until like the last, 10 or 15 minutes. But if you get past that, it's kind of a unique little movie. I liked it a lot. Yeah.
You've seen that one, Nathan, haven't you? And I know you weren't as much of a fan.
No, I wasn't that thrilled on it. I was really hoping for Friday the 13th at a water park with, a killer that's going around like killing all these people, when it's really not like that whatsoever. I would even be hard pressed to call it a slasher because most everybody dies in the exact same way. And it's not like, it's like a trap more so than like a person actually like physically killing them.
Well, it does have like very Friday the 13th opening scene though.
Yeah, that's true. Now I did love that opening scene. And I will say that, like, even though I didn't like it as much as Joseph, like the last 15 minutes or so are a lot of fun. Like, I was really into it then. But I don't know. The characters for me just didn't really, stand out a whole lot. I just didn't really care about their drama that much. I wanted more deaths kind of peppered in the middle, I'd say. But I mean, I don't regret watching it at all. And I didn't hate it. I just, I was just kind of, it was okay.
Okay. What about you, Erik? Have you seen it?
Not yet. No, I have it on my to-watch pile, though.
Okay. I caught it. I mean, I always kind of, if a film runs under 80 minutes, it always makes me a bit suspicious that something may have gone wrong with the production. But I enjoyed it for what it was. But I guess I fell maybe somewhere between Nathan and Joseph in so much that you kind of go in thinking it's going to be like a pastiche of 80s horror movies, which it kind of is. I mean, it's a Canadian movie, isn't it? Because it was made by the same people who made a film which I've not seen called Discopath. Has anyone seen that? Sort of like Psychopath.
No, but I want to.
Yeah, which was another kind of 80s or 70s slasher kind of throwback. But with this, there's I don't know if you've already said, but it's kind of set at a water park, and you've got this kind of 80s. It's kind of weird. It's one of those films that's kind of like it's set in modern times, but it's done as if it's an 80s sort of high school graduation party type thing. So they even have an 80s cover band playing, and all the characters are very much in that kind of 80s sort of straight to video horror kind of teen sex comedy kind of roles throughout.
How do they afford this party at this water park? It's like so extravagant. What high school can afford this?
I know, it's quite ridiculous, but it's got all the kind of cliches. But it starts, like you say, with a couple having sex at the top of a water slide, and then someone comes up with a machete and dismembers them, essentially. So it's kind of like a House of Death style sort of murder sequence with like rubbery limbs flying everywhere and stuff. But you kind of feel like if with the kind of the idea behind it, you would have this kind of a murder every 10 or 15 minutes, and you do have one other murder halfway through the movie, but that's someone being shot with a gun, which seems like it's a very much a kind of it was the decision they made. It was a decision to go that way. But I kind of guess if you want a kind of straight up teen slasher set at a water park, then you could do a lot worse than 2001's The Pool, which was one of James McAvoy's first movies, I think, which is one I'm sure we'll cover at some point.
Oh, I love that movie.
I like The Pool a lot, but I feel like the detective stuff in that movie really drags it down. I think that's why I kind of like this one a little more, because it just got to the point and was over. What you're talking about with a gun, Justin, where in the middle of the film where the character gets shot with the gun, I thought it would have been more apt if he was like killed with like a harpoon gun. So it would have kind of fit with the water theme.
Well, yeah, it just seems a bit. It was a choice, wasn't it? But I'm not sure why they made that choice. That if you're parodying or you're making a tribute, parody, pastiche, or whatever of 80s slasher movies without actually being funny, it's not a comedy, is it? It's not. It's a kind of. It's difficult. It's kind of almost like a kind of a straight pastiche of 80s slasher movies, but made through a kind of not exactly an art house, but maybe a quirky lens. It's our Canadian friends again. So just doing something a little bit different.
It's a strange movie, but I liked it.
It's well acted.
You know how brilliant it would have been though if they had had like say a killing every 5 minutes or so, like a slasher style killing, and then built up to that ending. Like that would have been.
It would have been a lot better.
Amazing.
Well, it was strange that there were characters who just disappeared that could have been bumped off, but you didn't see them being bumped off, like the third member of the band who just disappeared in the last half an hour. Just things like that. It was kind of just a bit. It was just odd, and which is why I thought, given it was only 78 minutes, whatever it was, 76 minutes, I wondered if there was maybe some production problems with it. Just seemed to be a few kind of issues, and also it didn't actually make the age of the killer didn't make any sense either. So
yeah, I was a little plussed with that. I was like, wait a minute, but yeah. I thought the unmasking kind of worked in a silly, ridiculous way, though.
Yeah. So, but I was glad to see a film with crimped hair in it anyway. So anything else?
Yeah, I watched Good Boy on Hulu. It's a feature-length episode of their Into the Dark series, which itself has been, I guess, less than adequate with its offerings, in my opinion. And Good Boy really is no different. It tells the story of a woman I guess she's in a race with her biological clock to have children. And she decides to purchase an emotional support dog whom she names Reuben. And he's a cute little dog, but he's also a vicious killer who literally makes mincemeat out of anyone who even slightly looks at his owner cross-eyed. But the problem, I think, with a lot of these Into the Dark films is that they treat the horror elements with indifference and maybe even a little derision. And they kind of amplify that, quote unquote, quirky comedy aspect of each movie. And the problem with Good Boy is that it's gory, but it's not scary. It's gory, but it's not exciting. It's gory, but it's not thrilling. And the main character, she's kind of hatefully quirky, like the kind of person who you would probably term insufferable if you had to spend 5 minutes with her. But boy, isn't she funny? The dog, I think, is the most interesting character, though the poor thing is treated almost like an afterthought in its own movie. I mean, characters kind of wander in and they serve a purpose for the story rather than the story serving them a purpose. And it's not bad. I mean, it's a slasher movie with a dog, but with a plot like that, it should have been a lot better than what it was. So kind of like Nathan with Aqua Slash, with me with Good Boy, I didn't hate it, but I was just like, Anyone else seen it?
I saw you post about it, but no, I've not watched it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's just, I don't know. I've tried with this Into the Dark series, and each one they have great bones, but they just don't grab me. They don't get to any kind of hook or any kind of ha-ha moment. It's just like, that's it.
Has anyone else caught it yet? I know. Is it just come out? Is it just because they're doing one a week?
Yeah, it's been out for a few weeks, I think. I just caught it the other day, so I'm not sure. I don't even think it's been out for like a month or anything.
Right. Well, thank you, Joseph. Anything else?
No, that's it for this week.
Okay, right. Well, thank you. Well, I've a few things I've caught up with. We had some friends around for a double bill of one of Nathan's favourite movies, which he talked about on the podcast. So I won't. I'm saying that slightly, not sarcastically, but it's not one of your favourite movies. We watched Eden Lake, Nathan, which I know you love.
Those chaps, I can't wring their necks.
Which we kind of forgot actually how downbeat that movie is. And actually, the more watching it this time, I found it even more of a difficult watch. So So we countered that with Case the Bloody Iris, the wonderful 70s giallo, which we have also covered on the podcast. So they're very yin and yang. But I watched a film that I hadn't heard great things about, but I thought I'd finally check it out. It was In the Tall Grass, which was the Stephen King and his son, which I can't remember his name now, but co-wrote probably one of their sort of short story or novella collections, which stars Patrick Wilson as one of the characters in it. Of course, is in the Conjuring and the Insidious movies, and he's pretty well known. But it's a kind of story. It's kind of a typical kind of Stephen King story, but I find Stephen King adaptations quite hit or miss. It kind of depends on the adaptation. I tend to find his supernatural stories don't translate as well to the big screen or the small screen, as well as maybe his more straight ahead psychological movies. I mean, with the exception of films like Christine and Carrie, but certainly I wasn't a big fan of Doctor Sleep. I found that The Stand got a bit silly for me. When it goes into fantasy territory, it kind of loses me a little bit. So, but this was kind of somewhere in the middle. It was it was a very kind of slight idea, which I imagine probably worked better on paper than it does on the small screen. Where it's kind of like a cursed field, basically, with this literally tall grass. And if people stop by it, they can hear people inside calling for help, saying that they're lost in this kind of maze of this kind of field of this grass, which is about 10, 15 foot tall. And when they go into the field, they too get lost and get caught up in this thing. And it's this kind of whole time jump of people hearing people in the past shouting for help, and then there's characters coming and going, and sometimes they're dead and sometimes they're not. So it's kind of like looping sort of storyline of people coming and going. And at the center of it is this kind of ancient rock, which has some magical evil powers, which is controlling certain characters who've got lost in the cornfield or the grass field. And just by its very nature, it's because of, like a lot of these films where they kind of looping over and over again and going from different directions, and you see events happening from different angles and through different perspectives, it becomes quite repetitive. And sometimes that can kind of work in some movies when it actually feels like it drives the story forward. Whereas this, it felt a little bit like it was very long, whereas Aquaslash was 70 plus minutes. This was knocking 2 hours, and there really wasn't enough of a story, I felt, for it to warrant being that long. It looks great. I think it was the Netflix original, or certainly it was released on Netflix. So how I saw it. But any of you guys seen it or heard of it?
Had heard of it. It sounds kind of Twilight Zone-y, maybe a bit like Triangle, from what you're saying.
Yeah, I think Triangle was more successful in what it was doing than this, but it's definitely worth a watch. I mean, it kind of goes off in the slightly more batshit crazy kind of territory of more like Twilight Zone-y, but like on steroids towards the end. It kind of gets. I'd be interested if you watched it, see what you thought of it. But it just didn't grab me as much. I like Patrick Wilson's fantastic in it, and actually plays slightly against type in it as well, which was quite interesting.
It's directed by Vincenzo Natali, who did Cube, which is a film I really like. So
yeah, I kind of guess I was funny in some ways. I didn't look up to see what he directed before, but we watched Cube not that last past 6 months for the first time. And I could see that, whereas I think Cube had that very much kind of literally moving from one room to another, and it looking identical and everything, sort of feeling. So it kind of worked better in that context than I thought it did in this one. But I can see why he was probably a natural choice for this movie. So, but Nathan or Joseph, are you any interest in that?
What was it called again?
In the Tall Grass.
Yeah, I've heard of that, and I actually was going to watch it. However, the runtime has kind of put me off, so it's low on my queue. But yeah, I will watch it eventually.
Fair enough. And Nathan?
I was really lukewarm on the trailer. It just didn't really grab my attention. But maybe I'm not giving it a fair enough shot.
I thought you would have been all up in a field of grass.
I don't understand.
Oh dear.
Field of grass,
hash, the weed.
grass, hash, grass.
Oh, that kind of grass. Okay.
You would enjoy that, wouldn't you? I'm sure.
Yeah, that'd be different. That'd be okay. Hey, do you guys know that it would be really scary to be in a cornfield at night? I dreamed last night that I was in a cornfield in the middle of the night, and that was scary.
Okay.
I know it's random, but I'm just saying, like you were talking about field of grass and in the tall grass, and it made me think of corn, and that's what naturally led to that.
There's never been a film with a killer dressed as a giant corn on the cob, has there? No.
Nathan, we have your weed. It still lives. Nathan, I don't think you hear so good. It's my Malachi Children of the Corn impression for you, Nathan.
Oh, I like Children of the Corn.
Well, I'm sure we'll cover it at some point, because I'm sure that would satisfy the slasher criteria, wouldn't it? We give ourselves. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of sharp implements used to murder people.
Exactly. So, well, that was that. The last thing I'll just mention was that I've just started watching, I'm not to say we got Spanish Netflix because obviously I'm in Spain. So we're probably getting some stuff that you might not get in English-speaking territories perhaps. And there's one, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's a remake. And I don't know if you ever saw this, Erik, was the Charlie Brooker Dead Set, which was the zombie
the Big Brother thing.
The Big Brother. So it's set in the Big Brother, or around the Big Brother studios, and a zombie outbreak, an apocalypse, and the people on Big Brother are in the Big Brother house, and they don't know that there's a zombie apocalypse happening outside. And Charlie Brooker is kind of like a comedy writer who's kind of quite satirical and quite sort of dark or kind of cruel kind of humor, I kind of guess, in some ways. And that was about 10 years ago. And they had the thing where the woman who presented Big Brother at the time, called Davina McCall, they had her on there being turned into a zombie. So it's kind of fairly meta. But for some reason, 10 or 15 years later, however long ago it was, they've done a Brazilian version, which sounds a bit rude for some reason, and set in a kind of a Big Brother house where they're all dressed as Greek gods. And exactly the same thing happens. So it's been quite fun, quite silly so far. But and I can't for the life remember what it's called. It's something like Reality Z or something like that. So, yeah. So that is all we've been watching, I think. So is it time to get a little bit chilly? I think it is. So,
5 teenage snowboarders are forced to spend the night in a mysteriously abandoned ski lodge, except somebody or something already lives there. It is huge, savage, and unstoppable. And now it's angry. But if you think this is going to be the usual trapped teen stalked by a maniac movie, you're dead wrong. From the first chilling kill to the final horrific twist, prepare yourself for the smart, intense, and award-winning international sensation that has terrified audiences around the world and put the edge back into the body count genre. If you enjoyed the original Friday the 13th and Halloween Raves Arrow in the Head, you're going to love Cold Prey. Okay.
Well done.
Let me catch my breath on that one.
You okay?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. All right, here we go. All right, so brace yourselves, amigos, because I vehemently disagree with that hyperbolic prose. It's not that I find Cold Prey to be a bad film. I concede that it looks great and it's shot with a sort of the gusto typically reserved for some sweeping epic, but I don't know. I picked this not really for myself, but for the listeners who've, demanded that we cover this series. Or at least the first two anyway. And so I think I'm the wrong person to review this film. For me, Cold Prey's biggest strength is that, it looks amazing. The cinematography here is so good that it nearly borders on parody. It's so good. I do like the snowy setting, and this one is suitably creepy. But where Cold Prey fails for me is in generating any sympathy for the characters. I mean, none of them are inherently unlikable. I think they just kind of exist in this, maybe it's an entirely different bubble from my own. And I'm secure enough to admit that I may have a bit of a xenophobic bias and that I can't really relate with the culture, simply maybe because I just don't understand it. Not to say that I'm deriding the said culture, you do you and all, but maybe that's the reason. But I just had a hard time identifying with anyone. And I also think the killer he's so nondescript to the point that, oh, look, it's a shot of his elbow or it's a shot of the fold behind his knee. I mean, there's no sort of fear generated from him at all. I thought the twist with his identity was entirely predictable, and I didn't really care because we don't really know anything about him or his, I guess we're getting into spoilers here, or his family, outside of those brief bookends. But to me, the film would have retained a bit of real fear by simply making this killer what he appeared to be, and that was just this kind of deranged mountain man. I'm sure I'll have more to say as we go on, but I'll just simply sum up that I enjoyed portions of Cold Prey, but really it's kind of over there and I'm over here, and I just couldn't engage with it, if I'm honest. I'm conflicted because I do love the snowbound setting, and yet I find the film would have worked a lot better with maybe some contrast. I think the plot is kind of cold and sterile and kind of dire. There's not much zip or certainly no heat to it. I mean, there's no pep in its step. I mean, it's all just kind of clinical. It has that kind of, that sterility to it that, permeates a lot of those naughties offerings. So, for me, Cold Prey, it's okay for what it is, but it's not for me. And that's really pretty much all I have to say right now. So let's turn it over to our resident mountain man, Erik.
Yeah, so Cold Prey, I mean, I like the first album, but the stuff after that I thought was a bit radio friendly. Sorry, I got confused there, Joseph. I was confusing Coldplay and Cold Prey. That was funny.
Is your
So I would agree with some of what you said and disagree with other bits. When this came out, it did have a kind of a hype behind it that I didn't buy into it at all. I thought it was decent, but nothing more, and I sort of still stand by that assessment. I think it's got a great location for a slasher movie, the abandoned hotel in the empty sort of snowy wilderness. It's kind of like what that Friday the 13th sequel that we never got, where they were going to put Jason in the snow. This is kind of, I suppose, what it would be like. I would disagree on the characters, though. I found them probably a bit more three-dimensional than you'd normally get in a slasher movie. I thought they were quite likable, but they all have stupid Josh Hartnett-style haircuts, I thought. Morton, the guy who looks a bit like Ed Sheeran, and that's not a compliment, by the way. He seems like he'll be a jerk to start with, but he ends up being kind of heroic towards the end. And Mikhail, he displays both heroism and cowardice at places, which I thought was an interesting point. And then his, he once he knows his girlfriend Ingen is still alive, is dead, he sort of wants to abandon his friends like Scotty does in Evil Dead, and run off and that. But I thought that the characters were kind of interesting. They weren't really, really likable. They weren't goody two-shoes like Jamie Lee Curtis in Prom Night or Terror Train, but they weren't horrible either. They weren't like all Glazers from The Burning. It wasn't lost on me, by the way, that the hunky, good-looking one of the group was called Erik, and that the sexy girl has a name that is not dissimilar to Inga. So I think the writers of the film are obviously influenced by me and my stunning good looks.
How would that?
So they time traveled forward and got the information from.
Well, I was alive in 2006.
But you're only Inga in your head, weren't you, at that point?
Sorry?
You were only Inga in your head at that point.
This is true. Yeah. I do agree with the cinematography. I think, certainly in the opening sequences, the widescreen shots of the snowy mountains are stunning. Now, there's this horrible, brief, short montage of snowboarding soundtrack by Nu Metal, which is one of the extreme sports with metal music played over it, is one of the things I hate most in the universe. But thankfully, that sequence is kind of brief. And then once they get to the interior of the hotel, I was my hopes were built up that this was going to be like The Shining meets Friday the 13th, but I don't think they make that much use of the interiors of the hotel. It seems to be just like this living space and this one corridor that seems to make up this hotel. It doesn't feel like there's any space inside it. It feels like a bit of a bungalow, to be honest. And so you didn't get that sort of cat and mouse and loads of nooks and crannies to hide in and things like that I was hoping for. Also, the lighting, I don't know if it's just because of the DVD I have, but it's quite murky and dark once they're inside the hotel, and sometimes it's just I suppose, a bit difficult to make out what's going on. They've done that sort of bleached all the color out of the image effect that loads of people were doing with their movies at the time. I think I blame Saw for this, where, you know, the films are just colorless and quite drab to look at, and I just don't understand what the point of doing that is. The thing I would agree with you most on, Joseph, is that I think the killer is a bit bland in this. His identity really is inconsequential to the plot. He's basically just a random mountain man straight out of Blood Tracks. He's not eerie or menacing or scary. I just didn't find him terribly interesting. I would have preferred a stealthy Jason or Michael Myers-like assassin up there, offing them one by one in a kind of mysterious, silent way. But I just had no interest in this killer. I just didn't think just didn't do anything for me. I thought the ending of the film was quite good, where the final girl is trying to pretend she's dead, and then she has to try and come up with some kind of scheme before she's thrown into this icy crevice. The word crevice is kind of rude sounding, I know, but
that kind of reminded me of that scene in Hostel where he's wheeling the guy through the corridors and he's hiding under all the bodies. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So overall, I think it's a decent film. I'm not a huge fan of the sort of more recent slashers, but this one I think is pretty decent. I don't think it's the second coming, as some of the reviews had me believe at the time. But I thought it was decent enough. I mean, I would give it a thumbs up for me. I liked it.
Okay. Justin, what did you think of Cold Prey?
Cold Prey. Well, I actually enjoyed this more this time than I remember enjoying it before. I kind of actually found it sort of different to you, Joseph. I mean, I don't know why exactly it is, but it's not that I've lived in snowy wastes or I'm Norwegian, but I kind of thought the characters were pretty likable compared to, certainly if you compare them to the characters in, say, the Friday the 13th remake or any of the Rob Zombie movies or any of the other kind of movies that were coming out sort of round about this kind of time. I mean, I always found it a little bit irritating with the synopsis you gave about not the synopsis you gave, but the fact that at the time they were trying to have the cake and eat it, really, with when they were talking about these movies, basically saying, oh, this isn't like those stupid slasher movies about teenagers in a cabin, but it is
those stupid slasher movies.
But yeah. we're better than the film is better than that, so we're a bit superior, so we're having, it always that kind of irked me. And you had that with Wes Craven's Scream. With we talked about that. I think when that came out, it was the new thriller by Wes Craven. Even though it was patently sort of parodying slasher movies, it was like we can't be seen to actually being a slasher movie. It's kind of, we have to be slightly removed for it, because otherwise we don't allow ourselves to go down to that level. So there's a kind of certain kind of snobbery. So I think the film, and we will talk about the sequel, I'm sure, before. I mean, not in great depth, because I'm sure we'll cover it at some point. But the sequel itself goes more down the pure slasher movie route, set in a hospital, so very much kind of the 1981 Halloween 2 vein, quite literally. But this one I thought I enjoyed it. I'd like to say I like the characters. I thought they felt genuinely like a group of friends who would be together. They weren't too annoying. But I think it was kind of, again, it's the director fell a little bit foul of this idea that he didn't want to make a trashy, in inverted commas, fun slasher movie. He wanted to make something a little bit better that paid tribute to the kind of 80s slasher movies. And that kind of backfired slightly, in so much that it was a little bit long on the exposition, and there really wasn't enough exposition to really warrant the kind of the amount of time it took to actually bumping off the characters. So we could have had a few, I don't know, sort of a bit taken a leaf out of the book or something like Don't Go in the Woods Alone, and had somebody in a wheelchair on skates or skis getting bumped off, or somebody, just some random hikers being decapitated down the down the ravine somewhere. Just something to give it a little bit more of a nod to the 80s slash movies. It surprised me actually how dated 2006 now looks. I think Erik, you talking about the Josh Hartnett hairdos, and it kind of it has that. It's funny, isn't it, how time marches on, because Cold Prey, it feels like a newer movie, and forget it's 14 years old. I sort of, I kind of like I thought the killer's get-up was kind of, it reminded me almost like the way it looked almost like a Yeti with these kind of goggles. So coming through the snow, it looked like more like a sort of like mythical Yeti kind of monster rather than somebody like a man in a mask. But ultimately, I think you said, Joseph, I mean, when we find out who the killer is, and I'll spoil it because obviously we always do, if we haven't already, there's a prologue where the lodge shuts down ostensibly because you think a little boy who had the birthmark went missing, and in fact it turns out that his parents actually killed him, or you're led to believe that they would try to kill him. And for some reason, which never quite explained, he actually, it turns out to be the killer. So the lodge was shut down in 1975, and he's been bumping people off in a kind of a Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre style-y, where he's been bumping off people who've been coming, keeping their snowshoes and all that kind of stuff going forward. I thought the final girl, whose name, which I'll say because I can't off the top of my head, but it's Ingrid Bedell, who I thought was really good. I thought that playing on that kind of final girl thing of like this kind of a spunky girl finding inner strength and beating off the killer, as it were. That sounds a bit rude, but she comes into her own, which sounds even worse in the sequel. But it's so I'll stop. I'll quit while I'm ahead. But overall, I enjoyed the movie more than I remember enjoying it. But I think it could. It kind of tries to have its cake and eat it. It tries to be like a revisionist slasher movie, in so much it kind of wants slasher movie thrills, but it also wants to be a little bit classier, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think it pulls it off.
Yeah, just before I move on to Nathan, I just want to reiterate, I didn't think the characters were unlikable. I just thought they were just forgettable. Like, I didn't engage with them. Like, I wouldn't want to hang out with them, is what I'm saying.
I'm
not into the extreme snowboarding crowd thing, I don't think.
But I kind of agree with what Erik was saying about how they kind of actually went through, there was a bit of character development, and they showed a bit more 3 dimensions than kind of quite often are kind of the slash movie alumni. Yeah.
But Nathan, what did you think of Cold Prey?
I love Cold Prey. I think I'm probably the one that liked it the best out of all of us.
Shocker.
The setting, the cinematography, the characters, even the killer. I thought the killer was very imposing with his giant pickaxe, and especially when he's attacking Ingen in the hallway and stuff. Like when she's in the room and he slams that pickaxe down right in front of her, and her eyes are really wide. Justin actually has a picture of that on his review. But I just thought, God, this is tense. Like, I was on the edge of my seat, even though I was like, she's probably not going to make it. I loved the final girl as well. Like you said, I love at the end when, she gets the upper hand, and then she just grabs that pickaxe and just starts swinging it wildly until it connects with the killer. And I'm like, that's how I picture I would be at that point in time. So I really liked it. I loved the snowy setting. I've always liked that for slasher movies. I've always found snow setting to be, very interesting. But yeah, Cold Prey, I think is fantastic. I will agree with Justin. Stripes, please. I will agree with Justin in that I think if they had it had a higher body count, maybe a few more deaths thrown in here and there, it could have been like even better. As it stands, it would be like an 8 out of 10 for me. It would have been a 10 out of 10 with a bigger body count. I'll say that. But yeah, 8 out of 10. But the sequel is even better, in my opinion.
And I'm sure we'll get to that quite soon, won't we? Hopefully.
Probably pretty soon. I imagine it. If I can remember correctly, I did enjoy the sequel more, but I'll wait until we get to that episode. One thing I was going to say about Cold Prey is that I wonder, because someone was talking about how this movie is going to be remade for the American audience. So I wonder if they're going to set it in America because it's not very cold here, or if it's going to be set over there. I have no idea.
Alaska.
Where did you hear? Where did you hear that? I hadn't heard that. It's set for a remake.
Someone mentioned it on the forums that it is getting remade for an American audience. That's what I've heard. I'll have to go find it, but I'll send it to you through Messenger or something as soon as I find it. But yeah, I've heard it's being remade. I just don't know if it's going to be set in America or if it's going to be Americans
set it in Antarctica.
Yeah, Americans going to a different continent or something like that. Yeah. I have no idea.
There's not enough slasher movies in Antarctica, I don't think.
Are there any?
Well, I guess not, because I wouldn't consider The Thing a slasher movie.
No.
Do you think body count movie?
It's a body count movie, though.
Do you think that
was a remake of Iced?
Well, I did wonder that. Did you see the bit where the guy goes out and finds the girl dead outside, and the killer jumps out the snowdrift?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I thought that
an iced moment.
That was a nice moment where the killer comes out the snowman. But I did wonder, because that was the silliest moment in the movie. Well, one of the silliest moments in the movie, which was odd, because it's just this idea again that a killer will hide in a snowbank. But there's that Bollywood slash movie, and we'll have to get round to one of those Bollywood slash movies at some point.
But they go on for 4 hours.
I know, but you can always go and do some washing up while the songs are on. But there's the one where there's another one where the killer hides in the snowdrift.
For me, if you want to go kind of silly but more modern, if you want to go modern but more silly, a snowbound slasher that I thought was pretty good and probably better than Cold Prey in my opinion was Shredder. From around the same time.
Yeah,
I like that one.
I like Shredder.
Yeah.
Well, do we have some background on the movie? Because I think it's a newer movie.
Not much. Erik, Justin, Nathan, do you have any background for us?
No. Well, wait a minute. The alternate title for Cold Prey is Fritville.
I think that's the actual title for.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the actual title for Cold Prey is Fritville.
Okay. Justin, do you have any background?
I've got a few bits. I saw the, and I'm going to mangle his name, but a director, Raw Uhag. He, but he has done quite a few films. He didn't direct the sequel. Apparently, he wrote the sequel, or I don't know if it was one of those things where it was kind of he was credited as writing, but it was kind of story idea type thing. But he went on to direct the Norwegian disaster movie The Wave. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's the one where a massive landslide into a fjord or some kind of inland lake causes a huge tsunami in Lake Tsunami to threatens a town. So it would kind of throw back to 70s. This is a throwback to 80s slasher movies. It's kind of throwback to 70s disaster movies, and it was followed by The Quake, which was about a massive earthquake in Oslo, I think. So there was that. When I was looking to find some reviews, I did actually have a quick look to see if I can find any Norwegian newspapers, and I did find some online, but I didn't find any references to this. So for whatever reason, but what I did see contemporary reviews of this were saying that this kind of came after that kind of glut of inverted commas torture porn movies like Hostel and Train and all those kind of movies. That this was seen as a bit of a throwback to kind of kind of halcyon days of the slasher movie to some degree, which again is possibly why it was seen as a bit of a breath of fresh air. That after Scream and by the time the mid 90s, early 2000s slasher boom had petered out, when kind of died a breath with Valentine in 2001, and then you had the torture porn movies that kind of followed it, and this was kind of the beginning of another little mini hurrah for the slasher movie. A couple of fun little factoids was that computer trickery was used to eliminate dog poo from the snow. So there you go.
Ew.
Yes. The cast and crew all slept. They actually all stayed in that hotel. Was where they made the movie. They all kind of stayed in that. The location is so they were. When they were running through the kitchen and stuff, they had to, I don't know if you've seen, I've got the DVD and it's got a behind the scenes featurette on there, and there's people making breakfast behind them for the cast and crew while they're filming them running through the kitchen being chased by the killer. And the last thing was that it was very, very cold, as you can imagine, and they used to keep warm by jumping rope with an electrical cable. So, yeah, that's my background for Cold Prey.
Well, okay. What about you, Erik?
Yeah, well, the Norwegian title that Nathan gave there, I can't remember what it is. Something Flit or Flitty Flat?
Frit.
Yes, the English translation of that is Open Season rather than Cold Prey. The director, Roar Uthaug, along with those films that Justin mentioned, he also did the recent Tomb Raider reboot for Hollywood from 2018, which I went to see in the cinema, and it wasn't brilliant. Sorry to say.
What was it?
Tomb Raider.
Oh.
Yeah, the new one.
I have no interest in seeing that. So.
Yeah. The lead actress, Ingrid Bolso Berdal, she broke into English language film roles with Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, the Westworld TV series, and she's also in the 2014 Brett Ratner version of Hercules alongside The Rock. Victoria Wing, who plays Ingun, she had a role in the Susie Sue biopic from 2012, Inside the Whore.
Oh.
Sorry, Justin.
Eric.
I had to do it.
Even when he's got malaise, he can still take swipes at Susie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a shame he hasn't lost his voice, unlike Toya.
Asshole.
The hotel room in which Ingun is killed, and the one that the others hide in later, apparently is room number 237, which is an homage to The Shining, because the forbidden haunted room in that is room 237 as well. And I think that is all I have.
The only other thing I got was the movie was shot at the peak of Jotunheimen. Helicopters flew 20 tons. What was that?
I thought that was a valley.
It says the movie was shot at the peak of Jotunheimen. I maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Jotunheimen.
Jotunheimen. That's what it says. Jotunheimen. Jotunheimen. Helicopters flew the 20 tons of equipment to the top of the mountain where the temperature was below 25 degrees Celsius. That's cold. It took 2 years to shoot the film and another 9 months for special effects and editing is what I read. And that's really all the background that I could find that you guys haven't read out. So, yeah, not a lot on this film.
Okay. Well, I'm just disappointed that Joseph didn't titter when he was talking about hymens, but
neither do I. I couldn't believe he didn't titter when he was talking about hymens.
No. Look, I'm not the one sitting here thinking about hymens all the time. You mean for 3 mo's, you guys sure do fixate on pussies a lot.
Ew. No need for that type of language.
That language is so untoward.
Yeah,
it is uncouth.
Well, it's okay because I'm associated with you guys, so I can get away with it.
I love the way that Nathan is like like Victorian school teacher of us all.
I know.
What?
The bright word.
Yes.
I've been trying to use bigger words. I remember telling you guys that already. I've been trying to sound more educated.
No, I'm thinking more about your kind of like when we say something and you go, oh, like you're shocked. You're kind of like,
oh yes,
clutching your proverbial pearls.
Well, sometimes I don't get the double entendres until you guys like say something else or laugh about it, and then I have to put it together in my head. And then once I do that, I'm like, they're funny.
Well, thank you.
It's kind of like when Homer was like, you were talking about chocolate, and we're like, that was 10 minutes ago.
Well, shall we, before we get on to some feedback, do you want to tell us what people thought about Cold Prey, or what the listener of the month or week, fortnight even?
Yeah. Out of 96 votes, 96% enjoyed Cold Prey, and the other 4% did not. The listener of the week this week is Tom Wilson, and he writes, loved it. Great slasher, great writing, creepy setting. Cold Prey is proof that you can make a contemporary slasher film without aping the 80s. I've always wondered why New Line didn't just remake it as Friday the 13th in the snow. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and YouTube. And our email address is info or feedback at thehysteriacontinues.net.
Okay, yes, thank you. And we've got some feedback coming up. But Erik, are you up for your? I mean, I know you're a bit under the weather, so your joke may not be.
No, you might not be able to do it.
There's always room for the joke of the week.
Okay. Right. Well, here we go. Brace.
It's my joke of the week. It's so great and fantastic.
How did the makers of this film contact the dead? They used a Norwegian board. A Norwegian board. Norwegian board.
God.
Thank you, Erik. Did you get it?
I got it because I remember Ouija boards.
Well, there you go. So yes. Well, thank you. Hopefully, the snow will cover that shortly, and there'll be no trace left of it. But thank you, Erik.
That was even funnier.
So, okay. Well, feedback. So, who would like to go first?
I have one.
Okay.
Says, hello all. Listening back to old episodes recently, there was one in which you referenced Nathan's Tombstone Mountain stories as well as Justin's gory graduation story. Perhaps as a Patreon exclusive, and I'm going to go ahead and say no because we do too much already. We could have the guys read one of those stories or an extract from. I would pick Nathan as the narrator as he is great at doing the intros to movies when it's his turn. Here's hoping. Simon.Logan. And I'm sorry, Simon, but I think we do enough as it is.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we may want to hear an excerpt from one of mine. I mean, I'll give you guys a hint. I'm writing one right now. I'm in the midst of writing one called Terrorize. And yeah, I know Night School did it first. But my names for the victims in it is Cornea, Pupil, Opticia, Lensa, and Satina.
Wow.
So, yeah. But see, my stories are like Cold Prey because it's about a sorority that goes to this place called Tombstone Mountain, and there is a crazy mountain man named Brutus living there that kills them.
Brutus.
What's his name?
It's not just like Cold Prey. It's like about 700 other movies.
It's like 700 old federal massacres almost. Justin, is that chapter you wrote for Gory Graduation, is that still available?
Yeah, there was a few actually. Chris Hudson, I think, wrote one as well, or maybe a couple, but they're still on Hysteria Lives. So maybe if people are good, when we get to Halloween, we could do a few little bonus kind of story times.
Yeah, that'd be okay. I can see that.
Yeah.
Little story time.
Exactly.
That would be amazing.
Fantastic. So, well, thank you, Simon. So, who would like to go next?
I got one.
Oh.
Me and Erik both have one.
Jinx.
Yeah, doesn't that mean a jinx? Doesn't that mean you're both going to die horribly by
No, that
Brutus?
Means that we owe each other a Coke.
Yeah.
A Coke?
If I could buy the world a Coke. Coca-Cola.
That's the new
soft drink
rule,
soda.
Justin.
Yeah, not snorting Coke, Justin. I wouldn't even know where to get that.
No.
No, it's not like you have a drug habit. But so, anyway, who would like to go first?
You go, Nathan.
Oh, okay. Mine says, this email is for Justin Kurzweil. Hello, are you still writing that book on the slasher films of 1981? Thanks, Matt J. So, Justin.
Take time to catch your breath after reading that long one,
Okay,
Nathan.
yes.
Yes, it's still in the pipeline. There's been a few real life things. I'm trying to waiting. We're basically building a house, which is taking a lot longer than we hoped for. So I'm kind of waiting till I'm a little bit settled before doing that. But I've done a lot of research on it. So yes, it is still in the pipeline, but it probably won't be for a little while yet. But I was playing with the idea of doing a couple of chapters that I might put out as a kind of teaser. So it was going to be writing about obviously the films of 1981 and doing kind of deep dives on all of those. But so that's still in the pipeline. But when there's any news on that, I will let people know. So
Awesome.
Thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much, Justin. Oh, and Justin, if you ever write a slasher book on the slashers of 1997, please include the Old Federal Massacre series. They are slashers.
Yeah, I will do, but I kind of can't see myself getting into 1997, to be honest, because if I'm going to get through the 80s, I'll probably be...
I mean, it's only fitting that you do 97 directly after 81. I mean, it's such a banner year.
Nathan, how did you manage to make so many films in 1 year?
I was busy, lots to do.
It's like a mini Jim Wynorski or something.
Well, talking of decades, just worth mentioning with the we've been covering the 1980s by year on our top 3 horror movies of the 1980s. Talking about horror movies which we tend not to cover on the main podcast, so not always non-slasher, but quite often sort of non-slasher horror titles. So we're up to 1989 for next month, I think, which of course
it'll be this month.
Oh, this month, okay. Yeah. And so we put out a poll asking whether or not people wanted to go to the 1970s or to the 1990s, and it turned out the 1970s won by quite a landslide, didn't it?
Well, it's 66-40, so it was not close, but fairly good margin.
Close. Well, I think we'll get to 90s possibly afterwards, but
default, by
default. But just to let you know that all of the 80s, top 80, top 3 1980s are available on our Patreon. So thank you for everyone who supports us, and they're really good fun when we do them, and usually actually they run longer than the main show these days, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, because we're basically covering 12 movies in so about an hour and a half usually from each episode.
Yeah, so if you want to drop in, and there's probably, I don't know how many, 40 episodes now on Patreon? Something like that.
We're almost, with the last top 3 will be over 60, so 60 Patreon episodes.
So hours and hours and hours.
Maybe.
Hours of us prattling on. So if you enjoyed the show, then there's more of it if you run out. So So who haven't we come on to yet?
You haven't come all over me yet.
Okay.
Come on to me yet.
Okay, Erik.
Okay, so hello. I recently discovered your podcast via YouTube after going through a bad breakup right before the pandemic hit. Anywho, I'm sure you don't need the backstory. I find a lot of horror content on YouTube to be severely lacking or forced. I won't point fingers or name names, but when the host or hosts start resembling a Watch Mojo narrator, what's a Watch Mojo narrator?
Oh, God.
Watch Mojo is a YouTube show where the narration is very, very similar in every episode, like the way they narrate it. I mean, I don't mind it, but
it's so vanilla, and they always pick stuff like that's so obvious, like top 3 times Cartman on South Park didn't tie his shoes. Just really dumb videos.
I'd watch that. Okay, so I understand the context now. I won't point fingers or name names, but when the host or hosts start resembling a Watch Mojo narrator, it's time to pull the plug. So I was pleasantly surprised to find you guys, because not only do I love slashers, but the way you approach the material. Is it unscripted? ?
Well,
I mean, it's unscripted, right?
Obviously.
Yes.
I mean, I never have anything in front of me.
Yeah, because it never sounds like you've memorized some paragraph. It feels like you guys are just trying to get a word in edgeways on a subject you love. And I don't mean that in a mean way. You guys have a way with conversation. Let's just leave it at that. I also threw a paltry sum toward your Patreon, and I'm willing to pay more if you guys ever do a video show. It's 2020, boys. Get with the times. I do have one issue, though, Justin. Stop saying don't go into the woods alone. It's not into, it's just in. Just in. Keep up the great work. And that's from Rickle Pick. That's a great name. Rickle Pick.
Rickle Pick.
I love it.
That's a Rick and Morty reference. It's Pickle Rick backwards. Yeah, that's funny.
Rickle Pick.
Well, I do. We'll try and memorize that, like sorority babes in a slime bowl bolorama.
Yes, I really want you to get that right someday, Justin, and I'm rooting for you.
Did I not get it right that time?
To write in more.
I want to say the word.
No, he said sorority girls in the slime bowl bolorama.
Did I?
And it's sorority babes.
Well, I'll get it one of these days. See, that you can tell it's not scripted.
I want Rickle Pick to write back in more, just so we can retire Simon Logan. Sorry, Simon Logan.
Be replaced by
Simon Logan never goes out of style.
Rickle Pick he's the wave of the future now.
Right. Well, I'm glad we helped you in a little way getting over your breakup. So mending hearts and splitting sides. Yes. Well, maybe not splitting sides when
we're not scripted. Although I do have notes in front of me, but no, we're not scripted.
I mean, sometimes I'll write notes about the movie. Like I'll say, particular scenes I might want to talk about. I'll jot that down just so I remember to say it. That's about it for me, though.
No, I was going to say, I couldn't imagine us, if we scripted this, how long it would take us.
An extra 10 minutes?
Maybe.
Yeah. The only thing I tend to write down is like the information from the back of the box if I'm reading the synopsis. And I'll have a list of notes, like what I got from the film, and then I'll just kind of base my opinion off those notes. That's pretty much it.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for writing in. And I will take it. I will remember, don't go in the woods alone. Thank you. So,
I just said thank you, Ricklepick.
Yeah, thank you, Ricklepick. So that's a tongue twister.
It is.
Right. So my one here is, hello, Podfathers. I hope this email finds you all healthy and well. I just listened to Patreon episodes 58 and 59. I love that one of the picks from 1988 was Poltergeist 3. We literally just covered that film in our latest episode as well. Poltergeist 3 isn't on par with the original, but it sure is a lot of fun. So excited to hear that you're going to be covering Cold Prey. I really loved this movie, although part 2 is really my favourite, which I think is a kind of seems to be the consensus, which of course Cold Prey 2 is just like we mentioned, like Halloween 2, and it goes straight in. It's more of the night he came home type thing, but set in hospital. So very much a nod to that movie, and much more like a balls to the wall kind of slasher movie. Maybe your movie is your future. Hold on. Maybe that movie is your future as well. I think he just means hopefully we'll pick it soon. I can only hope. Keep up the great work, fellows. Your fan, Jay Bullington, producer and co-host of Have You Seen This One? aka Histo. And P.S. Please cover Lady Terminator for Patreon. So...
I've never seen that.
That will be picked eventually.
Have you never seen Lady Terminator?
For that recently.
No, I've never seen Lady Terminator.
I think you would like it, Nathan.
Yes, you would love it.
Okay. Yeah. I'm excited then. I got a new one to watch. Speaking of which, Justin, I forgot to mention this in Recently Seen, but I did watch that Tooth Fairy movie.
Oh, did you?
Good grief. Like, why did they have like a 20-year-old guy like with this like gray, like it looks like this cans of like gray spray paint that they have at Halloween. It looks like they just sprayed that on his like facial hair and on his hair, and he's supposed to be this like really, a lot older man. It is absolutely absurd.
And did you watch this?
It's funny though.
Did you were you amazed by the realistic mask the Tooth Fairy had?
I was like you, and I told Wes, I was like, he wasn't watching it, by the way, but I did tell him at some point, I was like, I totally see what Justin's saying, because if I didn't know this was really supposed to be the Tooth Fairy, I would think it's a maniac in a mask.
Yes, it's a gift that keeps on giving, and of course you've got Tooth Fairy 2, The Return of the Tooth Fairy, to look forward to as well, which I think was shot the same weekend after lunch.
Kind of like the old Federal Massacre series.
A little bit like that, yes.
And now a word from our friends.
Hello, Headites. While Brandon goes to write down some more puns that Christian will threaten to leave the show over, and Dave goes to look for more red lights for that room of his that clearly doubles as a European whorehouse, please allow me to tell you about another great horror podcast, In the Mic of Madness. We also have what most shows only talk about, tits, real ones, on a real girl, and we call her Becca. She even knows some shit about movies. My other co-host, Brad, sometimes can get so loose with his lips that it's left on the cutting room floor due to the cease and desist orders. I will warn you up front that our show is not for the faint of heart. We speak fast and loose with our words and tend to offend as much as we entertain. We grew up in far less sensitive times, and our banter reflects that. We focus mainly on ultra-low-budget cinema that most people either ignore or pirate. We also interview filmmakers and actors you've never heard of, and get them to say stuff they'll probably regret once you have heard of them. So come on over and join the fun at In the Mic of Madness, where overlooked films get their fair shake.
Want to learn more about horror directors? With a lighthearted look at 3 of their movies? Meet fearless podcaster Gore Blimey.
I've been unsettled by bats in the past and startled by parrots, and I've even been known to jump at the odd cockatoo.
Discover horror films that are classics, and others, too.
There's a topless aerobics massacre, an exploding rock singer, cannibals, nude martial arts, a deep-fried prostitute.
But it's not all silliness. You'll get proper movie breakdowns, opinion, and background information, too.
Yep, in the 80s and 90s, Jeff Stryker was huge in gay porn. In every sense.
So if you're a horror film fan, come and check out the Trilogy of Terror podcast at strangeanddeadly.com or find it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or on your podcatcher.
One of those people that has a certain charisma and a certain style, and I'm just hoping one day he'll rub off on me.
The Trilogy of Terror podcast, where we try 3 times harder to give you the willies.
So, okay, well, I guess all we have left to do now is to talk about what we're covering next time on the podcast. And I believe, Nathan, is it Tooth Fairy we're covering?
Mm-hmm. No, unfortunately, because I had planned this one a while back. Mm-hmm. And then what happened, just to give the audience a little recap, is I went with Dream Maniac instead. And then Justin sent a message and said, well, I already got stuff compiled for this movie. So I was like, I'll pick it next time, I promise. So now we're picking Invisible Maniac. That way Justin can use the stuff that he researched.
Well, when I say stuff, I wouldn't...
1991?
Yeah.
90?
I think it's 90.
Yeah.
He's a maniac. He's invisible. He's the Invisible Maniac.
Yeah.
I fully expect Eric to hate this movie, though.
Yeah, I don't think it sounds like something I would like.
I really think you're going to hate it.
Well, when I said I did research, I did dig up a few articles on it, but I wouldn't. I'm not going to be able to write a book on it. Put it that way. But I'm glad.
I'm very interested because a lot of times you find stuff that I had no idea about. I imagine it's that way for you too, with me.
Well, yes, that is true.
Movies.
Hey, I'll tell you something you guys don't know about me. Give me any country and I'll tell you the capital.
Ireland.
Aye.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
So we're here all week, folks. So
yes.
Strap says, thank you to everyone who's listening.
Aye, Stripes.
I've got Catherine the Varigans on the table playing with my mask. So.
Anne Boleyn? Do you have a cat named Anne Boleyn?
We don't have a cat called Anne Boleyn, no. But not yet. Give us time.
Catherine of Aragon.
Yes. So, okay, right. Well, so we're covering Invisible Maniac next time. And so, Joseph, what are we playing out with for your pick this time?
Well, in maintaining lockstep with my overall feelings towards Colbray, I'm going to play out with something not cold, rather something hot. So we're going to play out with Some Like It Hot by Power Station.
Ooh.
Wow. Okay.
Super group.
Yeah. So flipping on its head there. So, right. Okay. Well, thank you as ever for listening to The Hysteria Continues. I hope you enjoyed us talking about Colbray, and we will, as I said, we'll be covering the sequel probably not too distant future, I'm sure. And of course, there's another sequel as well, or prequel to be exact, which we'll get to eventually. So next time, watch out for your panties because there's an Invisible Maniac on the loose on The Hysteria Continues. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Some like it hot and some sweat when